Welcome to episode 23, and doesn't this look cleaner? I've moved all of the clutter out into the other dimensions, and all of the drawers have gone now, of course. So we've got this system, and this is still a temporary location, but it'll do for now. This episode we're going to talk a little bit about autocrafting. So if you know about autocrafting, cool, you may need to skip ahead, but I will be covering lots of nuances that maybe you don't actually know, so maybe you want to actually stay tuned and see what's going on. So let's start with the idea of what's going on now in our system. I've replaced the glass cable with a smart cable so we can see the channels that are being used and whether an item is using a channel then or not. A channel is data, as I mentioned in the last episode, which just means if items are moving to or from it. Okay, so I've moved the controller down and used some of this dense cable as well as some smart cable. The controller can export 32 channels per side, 32 machines per side, think of it like that, or anything really that takes data. This is inefficient. We don't want to do this. I've just done it temporarily, okay? So yeah, you can forgive me for that. But generally, you'll want dense cable coming out of a controller, unless we're doing P2P. We're not to P2P stuff yet. Don't worry about what that is. I'll come to it when we get to it. So from this dense cable, which is currently running 6 channels, sorry, 5, you can see how many just by hovering over. But if you see one line, that means at least 4. If you see 2 lines, that means at least 8, etc. So one line, you know, it's not just it doesn't just mean 4. It means somewhere between 4 and 8, 4 and 7. Off that, we can just run regular cable, and then up. And in our case, the system was filling quite a lot. This was full, and that's because in here we've got lots of items. Remember that sifters were going for quite some time, so I've got huge amounts of items. Well, for this stage in the game, huge. So down here I've got some reinforced caches, and on the back I've put storage buses with a high priority of 1,000 to say, put any flint that comes into the AE2 system in here, please, and it'll do that. What it won't do, however, is move all the stuff out of those drives down here. And to do that, just put an export bus on the top. Tell it to export whatever you want, in this case, so to quartz dust. Give it a high priority and use some of these acceleration cards. It'll rapidly pull everything from those drives that matches into this, and then you can just lock this cache. Later on, we'll get to deep storage units. Not important right now. Okay, and this is just, these 3 are just for or dictionary stuff. So onto from cabling. Oh, and just one further thing. I use the energy acceptor here just so that we can just attach it to the cable, and then that means that side isn't wasted by putting the energy acceptor or this power cable right into it. We can just put it into the cable system, and then that will transmit power just fine. So just a bit of efficiency there, at least until we craft more than one ME controller, which works in multi-block. It's quite good. Right, so where was I? Oh yes, and you can cover them. You can't cover them with conduit facades like Ender.io. You have to use these covers, which is just forged micro blocks. So that saw that you saw in some previous episodes, just a handy saw. You can just chop blocks into pieces or into hollow pieces. If you don't make hollow versions, by the way, you try and cover this up, it'll chop right through the cable, and then nothing will work. So you need 8 of those in a ring to make a hollow version that you can put around the cable. Works fine otherwise. Then this is hollow, for example, that one right there. So now we need to talk about autocrafting. 2 types. Start with a pattern terminal. Similar to the normal terminal that we use, the crafting one, but it lets you encode these patterns. They are like portable recipes. You can make crafting patterns and processing patterns. Crafting is like a regular crafting grid. Just put your stuff in here, and then whatever is made by the crafting grid pops onto the other side. Straightforward. The only thing straightforward is how you actually use them, but we'll come to that in a minute. Processing patterns are when you want to put it into a machine and get stuff out of a machine. So if I have, let's say, this Ender.io alloy smelter and I want to make some dark steel, I can put in the left-hand side of this pattern the steel, is it steel? Iron, the crushed coal, and the obsidian, if that's the right recipe. I think it is for dark steel. And on this side, you put 1 piece of dark steel manually. You're saying this is the input, this is the output. Then you can then put it to your machine. Now, to get it into your machine, Ender.ios are pretty great at this. Others may not be, like metallurgic infusers. What you would do is grab yourself an interface, pop this somehow touching the machine. It doesn't matter much how, as long as it's then linked back to your system with smart cable. And then in here, you put your patterns and you say, in your system, craft me 1 dark steel. It knows this is able to craft the dark steel. It then sends it into the machine, and then nothing happens. Because the problem with non-Ender IO is that, or quite a few non-Ender IO, they don't export back out again. So they'll just sit in this slot waiting. In this case, we might do side config. In machines that can't do that, you may have to have some kind of conduit like this, just export out and then back into the top of this interface. It works like a chest, so you can just export back out, and that saves you having to use something like an import bus to pull stuff out of it. You can just push stuff into it. Saves you a channel, saves you cost. And do that when you can. Autocrafting, that's one part of it for machines. For autocrafting on another part of it, we need to go to different kinds of blocks. Before we get to those, one thing to note is that you can't autocraft at all until, have I got any recipes in there yet? Oh yeah, I did put one recipe. It's in here, one pattern, okay? So if it basically says, put in 1 block of gold and you get 9 printed logic circuits out. It's one of those processing patterns. But if I go into here and say, craft me 1, it's going to say no crafting CPUs are available. Because we have to build a crafting CPU. So let's pop downstairs and let's build one. It's made with a few different blocks, and it's a multi-block. Any cuboid will do, so a big cube or a big flat box, anything like that will be fine, just no odd shapes. And you build them out of crafting code processing units like this. Again, any shape will do once the frame forms. Crafting storage, this is roughly the number of items that you want total per job. So if you wanted to craft 1,000 of something, you'd want 1k bytes. So this is 16k, so it can do 16,000, I think, roughly. Inputs and outputs. But that's okay. And then finally, what I like to do, you don't have to do this, but what I like to do to be able to see things is put a crafting monitor in the middle, and it forms. Crafting monitor is also a very simple recipe. I'm not going to show them in NEI because you can probably find them quite easily in NEI. They are straightforward. And once it forms like this, autocrafting is now available. Now, what won't happen here, this ME interface, I don't think will work. Let's give it a try, actually, is it can make these patterns. So if I say 1 and then now it will let me start, I can pop down here and see what it's doing. It's crafting. Will it actually export back into the system? No, it won't. Oh, yes, it will. Yes, it will. Why are you... Maybe it's just this block will do that. That's cool. I wasn't expecting it to, but all good. Normally I use the AE2 natural stuff. This is an extra mod, so you know we can get extra features. In fact, no, it doesn't. Ha! I did actually see this earlier because this is why this exists. Yeah, I knew I'd done this. So here is the import bus. Once it finishes there, nothing happens unless you put an import bus as well. This is wasteful, especially next to the controller. So what you can do is just use Ender IO conduit to push back into an interface. But when you have an interface like this, where it's flat on a cable rather than the cuboid type, this cube type, it's not easy to do that. So you may want cube types, just bear that in mind. It just takes a bit more space, but less channels, so all's good. On to autocrafting of the crafting patterns. Now, crafting patterns need crafting table, obviously, and the crafting table in AE2 is called a molecular assembler. Let's just put down a piece of cobblestone for temporarily. And we want an interface. Now, there's a few ways to arrange these, and people always argue over the best way to arrange them. The important part is this is like a crafting table. Okay, so if I put it here, if you were to put 4 of these interfaces around it so they could all use the same crafting table, because remember these need to be connected to the block they're using. If you put 4 around it, they could work just fine. However, they'd all be stacked up if they all wanted to use it at the same time. So let's say you put a stick recipe in here, but some plank recipe in this slot, and you wanted to make crop sticks. They both conflict. They could only use this, you know, one interface can use it at once. So that's not really how I'd recommend using these. What I'd recommend you do is to put multiple of them around an interface. One here, one here, one here. That will limit you on the number of patterns you can use in each interface, but it will allow you much more flexibility in actually using, in crafting large jobs with lots of subcomponents. All right, so then you just stack up interfaces this way, and each interface, instead of getting like the theoretical maximum of 6, which it'll never get to, 5 if you want to put one on top, it'll only get 4, but it'll be able to craft 4 things at once. The other nuanced thing that most people don't remember to do, they just throw patterns in here and it'll just be able to craft things, is that you also need to be able to how to best put this, you need to be able to craft all the subcomponents at the same time to be really fast. And to do that, you don't want to put everything in one interface. So if all the subcomponents for that, like the crop sticks, are all in this one interface, it might be okay because crop sticks are relatively simple. If there was 4 or 5 stages of that recipe to get to what you wanted, it would still run out of molecular assemblers. So if you have lots of subcomponents in a job, for example, planks, sticks, put them in separate interfaces, not the same one, just in case it runs out of assemblers that it can use. So in our case, let's do something. Let's get this up and running because I've talked long enough and my throat's getting hoarse. So let's do fluix seeds, actually. They're relatively straightforward to actually make. Get our crystal growth accelerator, pop it down. This is a little bit strange-ish in that we're going to need to connect it. Let's just connect this up. It wants a connection back to the system, and it needs power. So we're going to have to connect via cable, which will give it power. When I use an interface on it, that's was an interface, there we go. I previously tried this with just an interface and it wouldn't provide power through the interface for some reason, not quite sure why. So if this has problems, again, it's another mod. Do just connect it with a piece of cable. It won't use up a channel, it'll just use up transmit power, okay? And then we can put the other cable here. And now this is an interface. So remember, this is a flat interface. What you may want is a non-flat one, like this one. Yes, I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul, or whatever the phrase is. But that then allows me to use other things like this. Say, you should auto-extract and insert. Okay. We may need to put a filter in this to tell it what it can extract. That much is for certain because you can put stuff in here. For example, if I put that in here, will it auto-extract? No, that's good. So maybe it actually knows internally what that is. So that keeps going up. Once it gets to the end, it's going to turn into one of these pure fluix crystals. So we need to be able to give it the recipe, which is fine. We can use the pattern terminal. Processing mode, 1 fluix seed equals 1 pure fluix crystal. Encode, grab the recipe, head down here, and we can drop this in the interface. There we go. So it now knows how to make pure fluix crystals from fluix seeds. However, I've robbed this interface, so I can't make fluix seeds, at least automatically, because it would need to use one of these. So I may need to make another interface. And once it completed, it got exported back out and into the interface, which went back into the system automatically. That is just like a chest. Once it's in there, it's fine. Okay. So I need another interface now. Let's just grab, you see it pops up here. So let's go to stored craftable and interface. Do I have any spare? No, of course not. Why would I? But I can just grab one. That's fine. Oh. Don't get absorbed in the anvil for some reason. Put that down. There we go. And now I need the pattern for the fluix seeds, which is, I think, fluix dust. Let's just grab it in here. It's sand, which I don't have an automatic way of doing this yet. And this is a crafting pattern and fluix dust. Is 2 fluix seeds. That's automatic. So we can now just pop down. And now there's my pattern. If I press shift, it lets me able to craft that. So if I ask for the pure fluix now, it should trigger both machines. Pure. Change to craftable only, and I don't know, make me 10. And if I press shift on the previous screen, it would just go straight to start, but this is sometimes useful just to make sure you've got everything you need. Press start, and away it'll go. So that should craft it immediately in the molecular assembler, which it probably already has done, and then it's already in here making them. Done. Something you will want to do at this point is probably convert your machines over. So now you may want to keep one manual one, but make quite a few more like this, and attach interfaces to them so you can do all kinds of different things. Alloy smelters are probably a special case that you may want different recipes in each one so they don't jam, but things like pulverizers, just build banks of them and just connect them all up to, well, you can do all kinds of things. You can connect one interface up to many of these things just by having the Endrigo conduits in the way. Yeah, so it literally just pushes out them into whichever ones it can. It really depends on the individual setup. The pulverizers, I probably will replace these at some point with pulverizers because pulverizers are really very fast, and we've got the assembly tables to make more thermal expansion machines now, so it's all pretty cool, and they are certainly a great deal more compact than these once they get going. Well, in terms of piping, and we can just put them to the actual systems down below, or I can move. Pretty much once I get all this sorted out and lots of stuff in place, I can move these out maybe to another dimension as well, just to keep everything nice and clean down here with all what is going to be an array of these molecular assemblers, all maybe in a different position. And these crafting CPUs, I probably want 2 or 3. Shouldn't need more than that, because I'm not going to be requesting that many top-level jobs, but it's fine. And if I didn't mention before, these crafting co-processing units, these 7, are there to help with subcomponents. So each one you add can do another subcomponent at once. So it can do 7 in parallel like this. 7 or 8's fine. I may have mentioned it, but if I didn't, I have now. So what do we do from here? I guess we can look at what we need to go for quests. And I did look at power. I thought, maybe we could also fit in big reactors this episode. No. Just, no. Big reactor, or is it reactor controller, actually? Reactor controller. So no. You need demon steel of the 3rd magnitude, which requires demon steel of the 2nd magnitude, which requires demon steel of the 1st magnitude, which requires tempurio essence, which requires the master infusion stone, which requires all of this stuff on the runic altar. Yeah. The Gaia fight will have to do. I have to open the Elven portal. I've been through that recipe before. I'm not going to cover that one again. And we need it for nether seeds anyway, so that's pretty much just a very similar recipe. So, not getting into big reactors yet. However, I can move this setup out somewhere else. One other thing you will probably want to do as soon as you start, if you've not already started AE2, is you'll want a sheep farm. You'll want the wool. Or, you know, do it this way. But ooh. Yeah. There's a few. They're all quite happy in there. It's fine. So I reused this setup I tried to breed beetles with. The breeder. I just put some wheat in there. It's actually finished now. It's run out of wheat, but that's fine. And these 2 or 3 will then get hit by that chronotyper, which will move everything into this half when they're babies, which will then grow up. And just do bear in mind to surround it with fences so they don't eat all the grass. And then they won't be able to grow back their wool. So this then just exports into the system. The reason for that is just that the dense cable and the smart cable, if you're going to use them, need wool. They need to cover the glass cable, and you end up with not enough of it otherwise. How much wool do I have now? Yeah, 3 stacks. That's quite good. You may not need that long term, but enough to get a decent amount of cable out should be fine. So between the episodes, what I'm going to do is go and convert across and do lots of recipes that let me do all the seeds, the AE2 seeds anyway. Seeds. Where are you? Maybe it's just seed. I think it's just seed. You can probably see them on the screen, and I am blind. There they are. So surface quartz seed, nether quartz seed, fluid seed, and these are just the growing versions, etc. We may not need soda squat seed, to be honest, because we're sifting. And yeah, we have a lot of soda squats dust, and that's what soda squat seed does. What we may actually need, however, is the charger. What we have in the system from sifting or from mobs, I forget which, is charged soda squats, and that is used fairly frequently. We've got 400 of it. By comparison to like 20,000 of the other, it's a bit annoying. We're going to use that for a few things. It's used for patterns, so we can only make 400 patterns. I know that sounds like a huge amount at the moment, but it may not do. And it is also used for some of the components. Yeah, so we're going to need to make that, and the cards, which we make. So to make charged soda squats, you can use a charger. Where is the Applied Logistics 2 one? That's the charger. It's a very straightforward recipe, so let's just actually make that now while we can. Don't forget about this. Don't forget about this, whatever you do, because if you make this too late and you run out of charged soda squats, you'll be waiting for more to come in from your sifters or your mob farm. So chargers are very, very simple. You can just pop them down anywhere pretty much. They'll only take power, at least as they are. And you can put regular soda squats in them. Yeah, I think. Yep. And they will start charging. That will turn them into charged soda squats, and then you can then use that. There it goes. It's charged. Done. So you can then pipe that in and out, and just put this with, you know, a power connection to AE2 cable, and you can basically make charged soda squats on demand, which is pretty good. And I'm still annoyed about this armor. I don't want to go to the Erebus. I really, really don't. It's awful. It's terrible to mention. How much of that mithril do I have that I mentioned? I may have mentioned earlier. If I didn't, that's one of my main concerns. Mithril. Have I actually? I think I've processed it all. Yeah, I've only got 115 of this, and some recipes require 4 or even 5 of this stuff, and I can only get it by mining. So that is a concern. Anyway, I will go and do that between the episodes. I'm going to cut this episode a little bit short today because I don't want to say too much more that just starts a new topic. I think next time I'm going to go back into the quest systems. I'm going to have to go across here and then down here to be able to open up the AE2 quests, which of course we probably mostly completed by getting the system out sooner. But we needed it. And then I'm going to add a lot in the recipes that we've already done so far for these types of things so that I can just order them from the system. It is a good practice to make a recipe to create patterns. So you want to craft the pattern recipe. Pattern. This is just one to actually do. Where's the pattern? There it is. And again, these soda squats crystal actually. It'll take the pure soda squats one, I think, because the recipe's in this pack. And then you can make more patterns automatically, which is just one of those really nice things to actually be able to do. There we go. So I can order more patterns now, hopefully. Will it let me? Craft me, I don't know, 10. Go. And pattern. Yep, 10. Cool. All right, thanks for watching this episode. I hope you liked it. Feel free to thumbs up or subscribe. More than happy to hear your comments, particularly if you've got any better ways of doing things. E2 always has arguments. It is always about the most efficient way to plan all of this stuff and the efficient use of channels. We'll get on to my usual data center build at some point as well. That's pretty fun. If you've not seen it before, look in my Infinity Involved playthrough for the data center episode. It's a variation on Soren's I forget what it's called. It's just a stupidly large storage system that you can make with AE2 without using too many channels. There's sort of workarounds that just let it be possible, and it's insane. It's like racks of these, just 3 or 4 high, and like 100 racks or something silly. And remember, our entire storage drawer system has fit in these 2 drives so far, plus those few blocks downstairs. So yeah, there's a lot more to come. And these drives, you can replace, these are 4K, but once we get autocrafting of 64K or even higher, I mean, AE2 stuff, is AE2 stuff extra cells, I think. Extra cells allows us to craft, that's fluid. I want non-fluid stuff. There we go. 1 meg storage. So you may even not need to get to deep storage, but deep storage is useful for other things like cobblestone, etc. This bottom recipe doesn't actually, as long as this is actually valid, I'm hoping that it is, but this bottom recipe is actually fairly cheap. Vacuum chests are cheap. Plastic sheets is cheap. Machine chassis are of course cheap, so that would make a really cheap deep storage unit, but it's probably going to need this one, which needs a dimensional transceiver, knowing this mod pack, which is a fair bit more complex, which needs vibrant capacitor banks and all kinds of other bits and pieces. In any case, I am going to get rid of this setup. I think I'm going to go to a setup that gives me a storage bus with the base types, so cobble, gravel, sand, dust, glass. I don't think there's anything else. Is there anything else, guys? Maybe. And then out of the excess of that, it will then export into our sieving system down here. So I'll get that set up as well between the episodes, and I'll show you at the start of the next episode. If you've got any more ideas, leave them down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.